Hi guys, Dwight here and I'm back with another video today, just discussing the new patch 0.58. So there are no balance changes in this patch today. Counterplay have said they're working on them, but obviously they need to playtest them, and I'm quite happy with this because I'll get to this shortly, my problem with Vetruvian, but I also think that it's very important that there's no knee-jerk change to Third Wish, which seems to be the main community outcry, because I think there are a lot more problems with Vetruvian than that. But generally I think unless a fix is really clear-cut or a balance change is very kind of clear in terms of what needs to change, then it's better that these things are left for like a month, but so that each season has like a very distinct meta, but also so that it gives cards time to it gives players time to work out which cards are a problem and how they can work around them, whether there is any counterplay to them or whether a card is just inherently overpowered and therefore needs to be changed. So I think monthly balance changes generally are fine. It gives, as I say, people a chance to work things out a bit more rather than just changing things for the sake of changing things without really having all the facts. So I'm not too worried about them not changing that. So in the patch what we do have is we have unranked mode, which has been asked for a long time, which is going to be great because it allows you a safe space, if you like, to learn the game, to practice new decks, to learn new things, and also to do your daily quests, which is pretty huge. So the kind of knock-on effect from this is I think laddering is now going to be that much harder because you're not going to pick up the free wins that you otherwise would do from people playing ultra budget decks just for the sake of doing daily quests. But overall I think that increases both the quality of competition and gives people a place to do their daily, so they don't just think, oh, I'll leave it because I don't want to lose rank when I'm this close to the next breakpoint and so on. So I think that's a really key inclusion to the game, and I'm really happy that that's here. The other big change to ladder is that now S rank isn't just S rank, you have a ladder system within S rank itself, so that obviously the high-end players can compete among themselves, try and get that top spot, see where they rank in terms of all their competitors, and so I think that's really good for the health of the game as well, because otherwise we're in a situation where S rank is essentially just a playground for people messing around with new deck ideas and things like that. And so again, this will make laddering harder because people in S rank now have a reason to try hard, where before maybe they didn't. But again, that increases the quality of competition and means that when you get to S rank, it's not because you've played a load of people messing around, it's because you've actually worked your way through the ladder and got there and deserve it. So I'm really happy with that. I think it's a great inclusion. The only other inclusions really are just bug fixes and UI fixes, and one that I'm really happy about is that you can now click Dismiss New in your card collection and get rid of all the new cards, so that you don't have all the numbers showing up at the top and everything else, which I kind of was a bit OCD about, and I had to go through and remove them every time I looked at my collection. But now I can just click one button and that's all done, so I'm really happy with that. So moving on to Vetruvian, like I say, I'm really frustrated playing against Vetruvian at the moment, as I know a lot of people are, largely because it makes up about 60 to 70% of the ladder, and most of the games I play are against Vetruvian, but also because in the tournament meta it's been dominated by Vetruvian, and someone released stats on Reddit earlier in the week that suggested that Vetruvian currently has about a 65% win rate in tournaments, which is just absurd. Even if there's a degree of rock paper scissors and there is a faction that should beat another faction, Vetruvian should never be at 65%. Like, I was really surprised watching the last Bloodborne tournament that there were no Vanar decks at all, and Vanar is supposed to be a good matchup against Vetruvian, but it just isn't the case. And so obviously there's something very, very wrong with the strength of Vetruvian at the moment, and a lot of that is attributed to Third Wish. Now, Third Wish is a huge buff and blast for 3 mana that can be played onto any minion. There's no kind of limitation on that, and I think that's inherently a problem in itself, because the minion has a huge health buff and is hard to remove. It has blast, so it can play from range, and obviously it has attack, so it can clear the board. So for 3 mana you're basically getting tempo removal, tempo damage on the general, you're getting value removal as well, in that you can get 2 3-for-1s with it if somebody positions poorly or if you combo it with Repulsor Beast, and so there's really nothing that Third Wish can't do. And I think the largest problem with this is that it phases out decks and factions that don't have an answer to Third Wish, and so the entire metagame is shaped around answering a turn 2 Third Wish. And so Magma and Abyssian are really kind of suffering at the moment because they are the classes with the weakest responses to it. And so that shows that having a meta like centralised essentially all around one card is a big problem that needs to be looked at. It's not quite as simple though as just nerfing Third Wish, because Vetruvian as a whole is Third Wish. They don't have a whole lot else going for them except that, and that's shown by the quality of neutral cards that are used in Vetruvian as opposed to Vetruvian faction cards themselves. So I'm of the opinion that faction cards should generally be stronger than neutral cards. Neutral cards should be used as like a niche inclusion to get towards what your deck is trying to do, rather than being an auto include because they are that strong and your faction cards just don't match up. So while Third Wish is obviously an issue, I think what is also an issue is that it's not just a limitation of 3 Third Wishes per deck, because you can use things like Alcuin Lawmaster and Twilight Sorcerer, which give incredible value in that you can control and recycle Third Wishes to get even more of them. And so we're now in a situation where there's this massive arms race where either you have an answer to Third Wish or you don't, and if you do have an answer to Third Wish you also need to play Twilight Sorcerer and Alcuin Lawmaster to recycle your removals to keep up with the recycled Third Wishes from the Vetruvian. So neutral card strength is obviously an issue here as well. Like, people talk about Keeper of the Veil, but I think Twilight Sorcerer and Alcuin Lawmaster kind of fly under the radar a little bit in terms of how strong they are and how much they contribute towards this Third Wish heavy meta that we're in right now. As I say, I think the problem overall is that Vetruvian just doesn't really have an identity in terms of what they're playing towards. Like, they have their structures obviously, but they don't see play because they're easily silenceable, and everyone runs silence right now to deal with Third Wish. But also because the structures don't actually affect the board on the turn they're played, and so in a game where everyone's playing like 8-9 2-drops, so they definitely have early presence on the board, just dropping a structure for 2 mana that doesn't actually do anything, that you have to wait for the next turn to get a 2-2 minion that disappears the same turn with that as well is not great. But I kind of feel like Vetruvian's identity, looking at the cards, is control and then inevitability, like Sands of Time with Time Maelstrom and everything else. You push towards the end of the game, you build your structures, you can repair your artifacts if you run the Imperial Mechanist, and then once you get to that point when you've got a lot of structures up, you've got your blast minions in the back to control the board, you can then start using Time Maelstroms to get extra value from the structures and everything else. Now obviously that isn't the case at the moment because, like I said, everything is Third Wish, and I do think Time Maelstrom is borderline broken as well, in that obviously every time it takes a turn away from the opponent gives you extra 2 draws because you effectively get another turn, you get to replace again, and so I think having the ability to chain Time Maelstroms back to back is also another problem, but I don't know whether that's a problem just because of the strength of Third Wish or because there is actually a problem with the card itself. So this goes back to the point I was making about not having a knee-jerk reaction to changes, because while Third Wish I think is objectively overpowered, way above the power curve for 3 mana, and I think everyone agrees that it needs to be changed, you can't just change Third Wish because there are other cards there that may or may not be a problem based on how strong Third Wish is, and whether they would still be a problem or even very underpowered when Third Wish is then changed. And so the whole faction needs to be looked at, inclusive of everything, but I think Third Wish is definitely being changed and will be by the end of the month. So going back to Third Wish, I don't know what changes we'll see to it. Maybe something like it can only be cast on dervishes, so you can get the 3/3 and blast for 1 turn. I think maybe that's okay. You can also combo it with the Dunecaster to keep that dervish in play, but that requires extra cards to combo, and you can't just dump it on like a Saber-Spine Tiger with Rush from hand and then immediately get value from it. It requires a little bit of setup through either Rash's Curse or a structure or something like that, so perhaps that allows it to maintain its current level of power, but keeps it more situational and requires some setup, like I say, which maybe balances it a bit. Otherwise, I think the other main offender is that it gives 3 health, which means that you either have to trade your whole board into the minion or you need to use hard removal on that minion to not have to trade your board, otherwise you'll lose your whole board next turn. And so I think the health is the biggest factor, because if the minion stayed kind of relatively low toughness, then it's not such a problem. It's just because it gets such a massive boost in health that you then can't remove it as easily. So like I say, just in closing, there are some cool new things in the patch that you should check out, but nothing to balance changes. I'm looking forward to seeing what Counterplay do with that at the end of the month, but I do think it's right that they keep it until the end of the month to make sure they get the changes right, and hopefully we will see a meta that isn't so dominated by Vetruvian or any one faction in March. So thanks very much for watching. I hope it's informative. Like and subscribe if you enjoy the content, and I'll be back again tomorrow.